Wow, guys, welcome back to our lesson. Uh, in the first part of the lesson, we were discussing about the adaptations of the veins. And we said that veins have wide lumen to reduce resistance to the flow of blood. We also said that they have valves which prevent backflow of blood. After that, we want to look at the capillaries. That is the last part of this subtopic. Capillaries, as we all know, because we looked at it at the beginning of the lesson, is that capillaries are microscopic and they form a network that permeates to all tissues in the body. And they have only a one cell thick endothelium, so they do not have the muscle fiber layer. They do not have the collagen outer layer. So they are just thin. They have just one cell thick layer. And the importance of this is to allow movement of substances across the walls, their thin walls. And we will talk about that later. Now, we have already talked about the exchange of materials. So they allow substances to pass through. So their main function is to allow substances to pass through and also to exchange of materials to take place. So at this point, I want us to go back to what we had discussed earlier about the capillaries. You remember this? We looked at this and we said that the arteries branch into arterioles, arterioles further branch into capillaries. And we said that capillaries have smaller lumen than arterioles. And because of that, the blood pressure increases. When the blood pressure increases, pressure builds up in the capillaries, and some water and small molecules in the blood leaves the capillaries and goes through the capillary wall to form what we call tissue fluid or interstitial fluid, as you can see here. So small molecules and water move out of the blood, the capillaries through the capillary wall and get into the interstitial space. And once the tissue fluid is collected in the tissues, remember tissue fluid has everything else. It's just more or less like blood plasma, but it does not have the blood cells. Doesn't have the blood cells and also the larger molecules in the blood, like some proteins. So it has everything else but no blood cells, like the red blood cells, the platelets, and all that. Now, once the tissue fluid accumulates in the interstitial space between the cells or within the tissues, exchange of materials take place, and that movement of certain parts of the blood into the interstitial space is known as ultrafiltration. So there is ultrafiltration takes place. Then exchange of material takes place between the cells and the tissue fluid. And you will have that. I told you the tissue fluid is rich in nutrients and oxygen. While the cells have a lot of nitrogenous waste and carbon dioxide. So the materials move from the tissue fluid, that is oxygen and the nutrients move to the cells, and from the tissue fluid, while carbon dioxide and nitrogenous waste move from the cells into the tissue fluid. And something else that also happens is that the water that is in the tissue fluid later move to the circulatory system by osmosis. It gets back by osmosis, such that you'll have a reduced amount of tissue fluid left behind. Okay, And I told you that whatever is left there later collects. The later collects and forms what we call lymphatic system. But remember, there are those materials that have entered in the tissue fluid. They diffuse out of the tissue fluid and get back to the circulatory system, including water. So that is what happens. And you see again, there are certain portion of blood that has escaped from the capillaries. So this reduces the volume of the blood that is eventually going through the capillaries and eventually to the venules. And then eventually from venules to the veins. So that is the role of the capillaries. And I believe now you have an idea of what happens. So this is what happens here. There is exchange of material that is taking place around this area. Then the volume of the blood reduces because some of the tissue fluid, the proportion of tissue fluid does not go back to the circulatory system. It forms the lymphatic system. And we'll discuss the lymphatic system later. Now, what are the adaptations of capillaries to their function? One is that they have one cell thick endothelium to allow movement of substances. They are thin to increase. They are thin to increase surface area for, they are very many to increase surface area for exchange of materials. They have thin walls, as I had said earlier, to allow passage of materials or to reduce diffusion distance over which materials move across either way. So that is it. And now you have an idea of the various types of blood vessels and their function. What I would expect you to do at this point is to know, to give examples of the various veins, the various arteries in the circulatory system. And we drew a diagram showing the various veins and the various arteries. So I have come to the end of the blood vessels. And I expect you to go and read about the blood so that when we discuss it in the next lesson, you will have an easy time going through it. Thank you.